For 11 years, she was gone. My daughter came back when I smiled, did what I had to. I was standing in my new kitchen when I heard the doorbell. The sound echoed differently than it used to in the old apartment. Everything was bigger now, brighter. The kind of space I'd dreamed about when Sarah was little, and we were still eating dinner on a folding table. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the glass panel beside the door, I saw her. Older, thinner in the face, but unmistakably her. My daughter, Sarah. I opened the door slowly, and for a moment neither of us spoke. "Hi, Dad," she said, smiling in that careful way people do when they're not sure be received. 11 years. 11 years since the last time had been in a courtroom. She was 22 then, angry, certain. She'd stood beside her mother and told the judge she didn't want me in her life anymore. And now here she was, 33 years old, standing on my porch like no time had passed at all. "Sarah, can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked past me, her eyes sweeping across the entryway, the open floor plan, the vaulted ceilings. I watched her take it all in. The furniture was new. The floors were new. Everything was new. "This place is beautiful," "I'm happy for you." I didn't say thank you. "I know it's been a long time," she continued, her voice softer now, "and I know I should have reached out sooner, but I don't know. Life got complicated." I crossed my arms. "It did." She looked down at her hands. I was hoping we could talk, maybe start over. I gestured toward the living room. "Sit." She did. I stayed standing. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Mom told me." "Of course she did. She said you'd done really well for yourself, that you sold your business." I didn't confirm or deny. I just waited. "I've been thinking about you a lot." Her voice warmer now, like she was trying to rebuild something with her tone alone. "About us, about how things ended. I was young, Dad. I didn't understand everything that was happening." I finally sat down, across from her, not beside her. "You understood enough to choose," I said. Her face fell a little. "I know, and I'm sorry, I really am." The way she held her purse in her lap, the way her eyes kept drifting toward the kitchen, the furniture, the view through the back windows. She wasn't here because she missed me. She was here because she'd heard I had money now. It started when Sarah was 12. Her mother, Linda, and I had been divorced for 2 years by then. The split had been ugly, but we'd managed to keep things civil for Sarah's sake. I had her every other weekend, and we made it work. But Linda remarried quickly, a man named Greg. He worked in finance, made good money, and had strong opinions about everything. Within 6 months of their wedding, Linda started changing the custodies. She'd call on Friday afternoons and say Sarah had plans, a sleepover, a school event, something that couldn't be missed. At first I believed her. Then I started noticing patterns. Sarah stopped calling me during the week. When I picked her up, she was quieter, distant. When I asked her about school or her friends, she'd give me one-word answers. "Everything okay?" I'd ask. "Yeah. Yeah, Dad, I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. One weekend I asked her directly, "Does Greg say things about me?" Get me startled. "What? No." "You can tell me if he does." "He doesn't, Dad." "Not like that." But it was like that. I knew it. I just couldn't prove it. By the time Sarah was 15, she barely spoke to me at all. Linda had successfully reduced my weekends to twice a month, then once a month, then when Sarah feels like it. And Sarah never felt like it. I fought it in court. I spent thousands of dollars I didn't have trying to enforce the custody agreement. But Sarah was old enough by then to have a say. And what she said was that she didn't want to see me. The judge asked her why. She said, "I made her uncomfortable." I'll never forget the way my lawyer looked at me after that, like I was guilty of, like maybe I deserved it. But I hadn't done anything. I'd been the one who paid child support on time every month, even when it meant I couldn't fix my car or buy new clothes. I'd been the one who drove 2 hours each way just to sit in a parking lot when she didn't want to come out of the house. I'd been the one who... And it didn't matter. When Sarah turned 18, she stopped answering my calls altogether. I sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts, texts that went unread, nothing. I kept trying for a while. I'd text her about little things. Hope your finals went well. Saw you graduated high school. Congrats. Thinking about you today. Never a response. Not even a courtesy acknowledgement. It was like I'd ceased to exist. I started having dreams where I'd see her in public and she'd walk right past, where I'd call her name and she wouldn't turn around. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with this hollow feeling in my chest, like something vital had been carved. I went to therapy for a while. The therapist asked me if I'd considered that maybe Sarah needed space, that maybe pushing would only make things worse. I told her I wasn't. I was just existing, just reminding my daughter that I was still here. The therapist suggested I write letters instead, put my feelings on paper, send them even if Sarah didn't respond. So I did. For 2 years I wrote letters, once a month. I told her about my life, about the business, about the house I was renting, about the little things I thought she might find interesting. I never got a single response. Eventually I stopped writing. Not because I stopped caring, but because it hurt too much to keep reaching out into the void. When she was 22, Linda took me back to court. She wanted me to pay for Sarah's college. Sarah was there, sitting beside her mother, nodding along as Linda's lawyer painted me as a deadbeat father who'd abandoned his responsibilities. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell the judge everything. But my lawyer advised me to stay calm, to let the process work. It didn't work. The judge ordered me to contribute. I appealed. I lost. I paid. Every semester I sent a check, $35,000 over 4 years. I liquidated my retirement account. I took out a loan against my truck. I ate ramen for dinner more nights than I could count. And Sarah never once said thank you. Never once acknowledged that I'd emptied my savings to fund a degree she earned while pretending I didn't exist. After she graduated, I stopped trying. It wasn't a decision I made all at once. It was gradual. A slow acceptance that I'd lost her, that no matter what I did, no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. I threw myself into work. I'd been running a small HVAC business for years, just me and 2 other guys. We did residential repairs mostly. It was steady work, but it wasn't making anyone rich. Then a buddy of mine told me about a contract opportunity with a commercial developer, big buildings, new construction, the kind of work that could scale. I bid on it. I didn't expect to win, but I did. That contract led to another, and another. Within 3 years, I'd expanded the business, hired more guys, bought better equipment, started getting calls from property management companies across the state. I worked 70-hour weeks. I didn't date. I didn't take vacations. I didn't do anything except work, and it paid off. The business became something I was proud of. My reputation grew. People knew my name. They knew that if I said I'd be there at 8 in the morning, I'd be there at 7:45. They knew that if I quoted them a price, I'd stick to it. I built trust, one job at a time. By the time I turned 55, I had 12 employees, a fleet of trucks, and a reputation for being reliable. I wasn't wealthy, I was comfortable. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. Then a national HVAC corporation. They wanted to buy me out. I almost said no. The business. I'd built it from nothing. But my accountant walked me through the numbers, and I realized I'd be stupid to turn it down. I sold. The payout was more than I'd ever imagined I'd have. Not private jet money, but enough to retire early. Enough to buy a house in a neighborhood I used to drive through and dream about. Enough for people to notice, including Linda, including Sarah. I really have missed you, Sarah said, pulling me back to the present. I didn't respond. I know I messed up, she continued. I know I hurt you, but I want to fix that. I want us to have a relationship again. Why now? I asked. What do you mean? Why now, Sarah? It's been 11 years. You had my number. You knew where I worked. You could have reached out any time. I told you. You've been thinking about me since your mother told you I sold my business. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I'm not stupid, I said calmly. You didn't come here because you missed me. You came here because you heard I have money now. That's not fair, isn't it? She stood up, her face flushing. I came here to apologize, to try to make things right, and you're just going to accuse me of what? Being a gold digger? I didn't say that. You implied it. I stood too. You haven't asked me how I've been. You haven't asked about my health or my life or anything that doesn't involve this house. The first thing you said when you walked in was how beautiful it is. I was being nice. You were being calculating. She stared at me, her jaw tight. Then she grabbed her purse. I shouldn't have come, she said. No, you shouldn't have. She walked toward the door. You know what, Dad? Maybe I did want to see if you were doing okay financially. Maybe I was curious. Is that really so terrible? You're my father. I wanted to know you were taken care of. You didn't care if I was taken care of when I was working 16-hour days just to pay your tuition? Her eyes filled with tears. I was a kid. You were 22. I was angry. At what? She didn't answer. She just shook her head and left. I watched her car pull out of the driveway. I stood there for a long time after she was gone, and I felt nothing. 2 weeks later, she called. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me. Dad? Yeah? I'm sorry about the other day. I shouldn't have left like that. There was a pause. I was wondering if we could try again, maybe meet for coffee or something, somewhere neutral. I thought about it. Why? Because I don't want to lose you again. You didn't lose me, Sarah. You left. I know, and I'm trying to fix that. Fine. Coffee. We met at a cafe near my house. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. I got you a black coffee, she said. I remember that's how you used to drink it. Still do. I sat down. She smiled nervously. Thank you for coming, she said. Sure. I've been doing a lot of thinking since I saw you about everything, about how I treated you. I sipped my coffee and waited. I talked to my therapist about it, she continued. She said it's not uncommon for kids of divorce to align with one parent, especially if that parent is more present. Your mother was more present because she made it that way. Sarah nodded slowly. I know, I see that now, but at the time I didn't. I just saw that you weren't around as much, and Greg was always there. He was involved. He came to my games, my recitals. He helped me with homework. I would have done all of that if I'd been allowed. I know. Do you? She looked down. I think I do. Now. I leaned back. What do you want from me, Sarah? She looked up, surprised. I want a relationship with you. You had 11 years to want that. I was confused. You were an adult. I was manipulated. By who? She hesitated. By Mom and Greg. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite anger. Not quite vindication. Just acknowledgement. What did they say? I asked. Sarah shifted in her seat. It wasn't just one thing. It was a lot of little things. Greg used to make comments about you, about how you didn't contribute enough, about how if you really cared, you'd fight harder to see me. I did fight. I know that now. But back then, I believed him, and Mom never corrected him. She'd just nod along. Or she'd say things like, your father has his own priorities, like I wasn't one of them. I felt my jaw tighten. And then when I got older, it just became easier to believe the story they were telling, that you'd moved on, that you didn't really care. Because if I didn't believe that, then I'd have to admit I'd wasted years avoiding someone who actually loved me. I didn't respond. She reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine. I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. I pulled my hand back. Apologies are easy. I mean it. But that doesn't undo what happened. Her eyes filled with tears again. What do you want me to say? I don't want you to say anything. I want you to understand that you don't just get to walk back into my life because it's convenient now. It's not about convenience, isn't it? She wiped her eyes. I don't know how to prove it to you. You can't. We sat in silence for a while. Then she spoke again, quieter this time. Greg and Mom are getting divorced. I looked up. What? She filed last month. He's been having an affair for 2 years. I didn't know what to say. She's a mess, Sarah continued. Financially, emotionally. She's staying with me right now because she can't afford her own place. The house was in his name, and there it was. You're helping her, I said flatly. She's my mom. And I'm your father. I know. Do you need money? Her face flushed. What? No, I'm not. This isn't about that. But it was. I could see it in the way she couldn't meet my eyes. in the way she'd mentioned Linda's financial situation, unprompted. "I'm not giving you money, Sarah. I'm not asking for money." "Good." She stood abruptly. "You know what? Forget it. I thought maybe we could move past this, but clearly you're determined to punish me forever." "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself." She grabbed her purse and left without another word. I finished my coffee. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from her, handwritten, 4 pages long. I almost threw it away, but I didn't. I read it. She talked about her childhood, about how she'd felt caught between 2 parents who hated each other, about how she'd internalized Linda's anger and Greg's dismissiveness, about how she'd convinced herself that my absence meant I didn't care, because believing that was easier than admitting she'd been complicit in pushing me away. She talked about therapy, about how she'd started going after her own engagement fell apart 2 years ago, about how she'd begun to realize the patterns she'd learned growing up, conflict avoidance, people-pleasing, aligning with whoever had the most power in the room. She talked about Linda, about how she'd always seen her mother as the victim, about how it was only now, watching Linda spiral after Greg's betrayal, that she was starting to see how Linda had weaponized her pain, how she'd used Sarah as a tool to hurt me, and she talked about regret. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve that. But I need you to know that I see what I did. I see what I lost. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I set the letter down. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I just felt tired. I sat in my living room for a long time that evening. The house was quiet, too quiet. I'd bought it thinking it would feel like an accomplishment, like proof that I'd made something despite everything. But sitting there alone, reading my daughter's words, I realized something. The house didn't feel like success. It felt empty. I thought about all the years I'd worked, all the sacrifices. I'd told myself that one day it would all be worth it for what? I had money, had security. I didn't have to worry about bills or unexpected expenses, but I also didn't have anyone to share it with. I thought about calling Sarah, about telling her I'd read the letter, about saying something, but I didn't know what that something would be. So I put the letter in a drawer and went to bed. I didn't respond to the letter, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what to say. For weeks, I turned it over in my mind. Late at night, when the house was too quiet, I'd think about Sarah as a little girl, the way she used to run to me when I picked her up from school, the way she'd sit on my shoulders at the park and laugh when I pretended to almost drop her. I thought about the last time I'd heard her laugh, really laugh. I couldn't remember, and that hurt more than anything she'd done. But I also thought about the years of silence, the court dates, the ignored calls, the birthday texts that went unanswered. I thought about the way she'd looked around my house that first, cataloging everything like she was appraising it. And I thought about Linda, about how she'd systematically turned my daughter against me and then walked away unscathed while I paid the... Sarah had been a child once, but she hadn't been a child in a long time. And at some point, she'd made a choice. I needed to understand something about myself, about why I couldn't just let it go. I started journaling. Not something I'd ever done before, but my therapist years ago had suggested it. I'd ignored her then. Now I pulled out a notebook and started writing. I wrote about the day Sarah was born, about how I'd held her for the first time and felt this overwhelming sense of responsibility, like my entire life had suddenly aligned around this one tiny person. I wrote about her first steps, her first words, the first time she told me she loved me. I wrote about the divorce, about how I'd promised myself I wouldn't let it affect her, that I'd be there no matter what. And I wrote about the slow realization that I was losing her, that no matter what I did, it wouldn't be enough. The words came easier than I expected, page after page, week after week. And slowly, something started to shift. I started to see the situation differently. Not better, not worse, clearer. Sarah had been manipulated, that was true. But she'd also been complicit. She'd made choices that hurt me. And I couldn't pretend that didn't matter just because she was sorry now. 3 months after the letter, Sarah called in. I answered, "Hi, Dad." Hi. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. I wasn't sure I would either. She laughed softly. It sounded nervous. I got your silence on the letter. I understand. Do you? I think so. You don't trust me. No, I said. I don't. There was a pause, then, that's fair? We talked for a few minutes, surface-level stuff. She told me about her job. She worked in marketing for a tech company. She told me she'd moved to a bigger apartment. She didn't mention Linda. I didn't ask. Mom's getting help, she said suddenly. She started seeing a therapist, and she stopped drinking. Good for her. She asked about you. I didn't respond. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry for everything. That's not your responsibility, Sarah. I know, but I thought you should know. Okay, another pause. I'd like to see you again, she said. If you're open to it, maybe. Okay, that's better than no. We hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time. I didn't know what I wanted. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that she'd genuinely changed, that this wasn't just about money or convenience or guilt. But another part of me, the part that had spent 11 years alone, didn't care. That part of me had moved on. I decided to meet with her one more time, not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I needed to know for sure. We met at a park this time, neutral ground. She brought coffee again. We sat on a bench near a pond. Thank you for agreeing to this. Sure. I know you don't believe me. About wanting a relationship, but I meant what I said in the letter. I do see what I did. Okay. She looked at me. You're not going to make this easy, are you? Why should I? She nodded slowly. You're right. You shouldn't. We sat in silence for a while, watching ducks glide across the water. Then Sarah spoke again. Mom's in a bad place. I didn't respond. She's drinking a lot. She doesn't leave the apartment much. She's angry all the time. Not my problem. I know, I'm not asking you to care. I thought you should know. Why? Because I think part of why I avoided you for so long was because I was afraid of what it would mean. If I admitted you were right, if I admitted she was wrong, it felt like a betrayal. Of her? Yeah, but not of me, she flinched. No, not of you. I stood up. I think we're done here. Dad, wait. I heard you, Sarah. I heard your apology. I read your letter, but I don't think you understand what you're asking me to do. You want me to just let it go. To pretend the last 11 years didn't happen, and I can't do that. I'm not asking you to pretend. Then what are you asking? She stood too, tears streaming down her face. I'm asking you to let me try. To let me prove that I'm not the person I was, that I can be better. Why now? Because I don't want to lose you again. You already did. Her face crumpled. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. A week later, I got a text from Linda. I almost blocked the number, but curiosity won out. Sarah told me you've been seeing each other. She says you won't forgive her. You should be ashamed of yourself. She's trying, and you're being cruel. You always were selfish. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed a response. I paid for her college while she pretended I didn't exist. I showed up for 11 years to a relationship she refused to have. Don't talk to me about selfish. I deleted it before sending. Then I blocked her. I hired a lawyer, not because I wanted to do anything dramatic, but because I wanted to make sure my affairs were in order. I'd worked too hard to build something just to have it disappear into the wrong hands. I updated my will. I set up a trust. I made sure that if anything happened to me, my assets would go where I wanted them to go, and I made sure Sarah's name wasn't on any of it. My lawyer didn't ask questions. He just nodded and drew up the paperwork. When I signed it, I felt a strange sense of relief, not because I was punishing Sarah, but because I was finally taking control of the one thing You want the primary beneficiary to be the Children's Hospital Foundation? My lawyer asked, reviewing the doc. Yes. And nothing for immediate family? I don't have immediate family, not really. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Understood. What? I left his office feeling lighter than I had in years. 6 months passed. Sarah stopped calling, stopped texting. I assumed she'd finally given up. Then one day I ran into her at a grocery store. She was standing in the produce section, holding a bag of apples. She looked thinner, tired. There were dark circles under her eyes. She saw me before I could turn away. "Dad." "Sarah." We stood there awkwardly. "How are you?" she asked. "Fine. You?" "Okay, busy." "Good." She looked like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. "Take care," I said, and walked away. That night, I thought about her for the first time in months. I wondered if she was happy, if she'd found whatever it was she was looking for. I hope she had. But I also hope she understood that I couldn't be the one to give it to her. I started volunteering. Not because I needed something to do, but because I wanted to do something that mattered. I began working with a local nonprofit that helped single fathers navigate custody battles. I'd sit in meetings and listen to men tell stories that sounded eerily similar to mine. Men who were trying to be present, but were being systematically shut out. Men who were paying support and showing up and still losing. I didn't give them money. I gave them something better, my time. I told them what I'd learned about keeping records, about staying calm in court, about not giving up even when the system seemed rigged against them. I told them about documentation, how to keep a log of every visit, every phone call, every text message, how to save emails, how to record conversations when the law allowed it. I told them about patience, how the courts moved slowly, how judges needed to see patterns, not isolated incidents. And I told them about acceptance, how sometimes, despite everything you did, you still lost, how that didn't mean you'd failed. It just meant the system was broken. Slowly, I started to feel like I had a purpose again, not as Sarah's father, just as myself. One of the guys I mentored, a man named Marcus, reminded me of myself 20 years ago. He had a daughter, 8 years old. His ex-wife had remarried a wealthy man and was trying to cut him out. "She tells the judge I'm unreliable," Mark said, his voice shaking, "but I've never missed a payment, never missed a visit. I show up every time." "I know," I said. "So why doesn't anyone believe me?" "Because the system assumes mothers are better parents. It assumes fathers are secondary. You have to work twice as hard to prove you're worth half as much." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "How do you keep going?" "You don't," I said. "Not forever. Eventually you have to decide if the fight is worth what it's costing you. And if it's not, then you let go, and you build a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's approval." He nodded slowly. A year later, Marcus won joint custody. He called me the day the judge made the ruling. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. "Yeah, you could have. Maybe, but it would have taken longer." I smiled. "Good luck, Marcus. Thank you for everything." After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time. I hadn't been able to save my own relationship with Sarah, but maybe I'd helped save his, and that felt like enough. A year later, I got a wedding invitation in the mail. Sarah was getting married. I stared at the envelope for a long time before I opened it. Inside was a standard invitation, formal, impersonal, no note, no personal message. Just my name and address printed on the envelope. There was an RSVP card, 2 options, joyfully accepts or regretfully declines. I held the card in my hand for a week before I filled it out. I checked regretfully declines. I didn't add a note. I didn't send a gift. I just put the card in the mail and tried not to think about it. On the day of her wedding, I went fishing. I'd bought a small cabin up north a year earlier. It wasn't fancy, just a place to disappear when the world got too loud. I sat on the dock with a rod in my hand and watched the sun set over the lake. I thought about Sarah, about the little girl she used to be, about the woman she'd become. And I realized something. I didn't hate her. I didn't even resent her anymore. I just didn't know her. And that was okay. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The water was still, peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt at peace, not because everything was resolved, but because I'd finally stopped waiting for it to be. 3 years later, I got a call from a hospital. Sarah had listed me as her emergency contact. "Mr. Patterson, your daughter was in a car accident. She's stable, but she's asking for you." I didn't hesitate. I drove straight there. When I walked into her room, she looked small, fragile. Her arm was in a cast, and there were bruises on her face. Dad, she whispered. I sat down beside her bed. I'm here. She started crying. I didn't know who else to call. It's okay. I'm sorry. For everything. I know I don't deserve... Sarah, she stopped. You don't need to apologize right now. Just rest. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I stayed until she fell asleep. Then I walked out to the waiting room. A man was sitting there, mid-30s, wearing a wedding ring. Are you Sarah's father? He asked, standing up. I am. I'm Daniel, her husband. We shook hands. She talks about you sometimes. Does she? She regrets how things went. Between you two. I didn't respond. She's been trying to figure out how to reach out, but she didn't think you'd want to hear from her. She was probably right. He looked surprised. Then he nodded. Fair enough. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to her. She's still my daughter. He smiled sadly. She is. I left shortly after that. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after that. Sarah called me a week later. Dad? Yeah. Thank you for coming to the hospital. You're welcome. I know things are complicated between us, but it meant a lot. I'm glad you're okay, Sarah. There was a pause. Can we talk sometime? When I'm feeling better? Maybe. Irsta. Okay, that's better than no. We hung up. We didn't rebuild our relationship overnight, but we started talking again, slowly, carefully. She didn't ask me for money. She didn't ask me for anything. She just asked if we could try. And for the first time in years, I said yes, not because I'd forgiven her, but because I'd forgiven myself. For years, I'd carried the weight of her rejection like it was my fault. Like I'd failed as a father, but I hadn't. I'd done everything I could, and that had to be enough. Now, when people ask me about my daughter, I tell them the truth. We're working on it. It's not perfect, it's not easy, but it's honest. And after everything, that's all I ever wanted.